Good morning and welcome to the Abundant Retirement Show from Ross Wealth Advisors. My name is Joe Bradley, but that's not important. What's important is that Don Ross, the retirement boss from Ross Wealth Advisors, is here this morning. And good morning. It's been good seeing you today, and look forward to getting together with you on a regular basis here on Rewind every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. so we can help people get their things in order. So an abundant retirement is what they will have as they get there.
So I'm glad to be here and bringing good information every Sunday at 7 a.m. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things about how to plan and enjoy an abundant retirement, whether you're retired now or you're 5 to 10 years from retiring. You know, Joe, we're going to talk about very, very important topics every week. And you know what? I'm glad you're here doing it with me. And so we're going to have a good time and dispense some very good information that all of you listening can take advantage of.
Well, and you know, the bottom line is retirement is the thing that you work for. I mean, there are a lot of things that you work for, you know, throughout the course of your life. You know, I mean, when you're very, very young, you know, you get a job so you can get a car, you know, you get a job so you can, you know, get on with life and, you know, get a house, and then you're raising your kids and putting your kids through college and just everything that happens in an everyday world. But ultimately, I mean, you're working for yourself at some point where you're going to hit that point where you say, look, I've done as much as I can. I've done all I need to, and now I want to enjoy it. I want to enjoy my abundant retirement. And there are a lot of pitfalls along the way, and I guess the key to it is not only just saving. It's not only just working hard and doing well throughout your generation life, which I like to call it, you know, the time of life where you're generating income. But, you know, you've got to be able to make sure it's in the right place and so that it's going to work for you later down the road, which is where your retirement fund comes into play.
And a lot of people, you know, by the way, I like the word, the title you gave me when we started this was the
retirement boss.
Yeah.
Don Ross, the retirement boss.
It rhymes. So, you know, and I sit with families every day and they don't know when can they retire. And usually people will choose a date, or if they work in the military or police and fire, they have to retire at a certain age. And
30 years or 25, depending on their age and all that. Right.
You know, I had a couple in this week that have saved very well and work for the state, actually Ohio State, and she's ready to retire and they can afford to, but he's nervous. And, you know, I wrote on a number. I wrote their net worth on a number, and I said, you know, you guys, if you don't enjoy what you've accumulated, then it has no value.
Right.
And
whatever that number is, you may as well make it a great big goose egg. Make it a big zero, and say, what difference does it make how much money you have if it's not something that you enjoy in the future?
And so their concern was, which I'd like to get into today, is you know, they're concerned about their portfolio and is it positioned properly, or is it invested appropriately for the next stage of their life, which is planning for retirement? In this case, this family is about 2 years out, and you know they're only early 60s. Okay, so
it's definitely
retirement can be a long time.
And the portfolio is, I mean, it is the thing. The portfolio, that is a key word to remember. Portfolio, and we're going to certainly delve into that a lot deeper, not only today, but really every time we get together, there are going to be different elements of your portfolio that you need to consider and that you need to have dealt with by someone who is an expert in the area. And speaking of that leads me right into kind of the next thing here, and that is for you, Don, to talk a little bit about Ross Wealth Advisors. What is Ross Wealth Advisors? Obviously, it has your name on it.
Is it an is or is it an R?
Yeah, so...
We are or we is. So,
right. So, I mean, it clearly, I mean, your name is there, front and center, but there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. But talk about Ross Wealth Advisors.
Yeah, so I founded this company many years ago. I've been in the business 30 years, and we help families make good decisions on their investments. And when we use the term portfolio, it's really saying, where have you saved for retirement? 401ks, 403bs, all these different plans you can save in. So we make sure it's invested appropriately. You understand how to generate an income stream. Are you paying the least amount of taxes? Are you taking more risk? Are you paying fees? I mean, we look at all that and we want to do estate plan. Make sure that when you're done with this money, that it goes where you want it to go. We look at healthcare planning.
It's your money.
Yeah,
exactly.
And Uncle Stan would love to step in in hopes you make a little mistake, and they're there to collect their fee, if you will.
Right. So before we get too far along there, let's talk. I mean, I know you're fairly humble, believe it or not, but even though as successful as you are, how did you get into the business of helping people to plan for their abundant retirements? What brought you to the place where you have now 30 years experience in planning people's futures for them?
Probably as a kid reading the business section. I grew up here right in Central Ohio and Upper Arlington, and used to love reading the business section. And I always liked hanging out with, I don't know, I guess you could say older people, and just somehow I stumbled into it. And I started off with one of the big firms, and then I decided it was very important to go independent. Meaning,
why would you do that? Why? I mean, that's the goal of everyone, to get in with a big firm. You've got all these resources. You've got all these people surrounding you. You've got all the help you could need. You've got all the market research. I mean, that's the place to be, isn't it?
I have access to that, but I have access that now when I design a plan for families we serve, it's truly unbiased and it's independent, and we provide fiduciary services, meaning your concerns are put before ours and mine. And most people say, well, shouldn't it be anyhow? Well, depends on how you're employed out there, whether you work for a bank or brokerage firm. Sometimes your information you're going to get as advice will be limited. I always tell people, hey, if you walk into a Chevy dealer looking for a Volkswagen, are you going to get what you want?
They're probably not going to tell you a lot about a Beetle. That makes sense.
Right.
Makes a lot, unless they say something bad about it. But
so our planning is to address your particular needs that are unique and specialized, and that's how we're different. So it does start off with a portfolio, and we offer what's called a portfolio MRI, and we'll go into that a little bit before our break. But now we want to look and take a look at your portfolio and what are you doing in your savings that is creating more risk, excessive fees you don't even realize, and is it appropriate for where you are? And this is when I sit down with families every day, and I'm going to offer this to our listeners, really going through to say, hey, you know what, this portfolio, if we have another 2008, 2009, do you realize you could lose 25 or 30%? And if you're 5 or 10 years or even retired,
that's a problem.
That could be a problem, and everybody has a different threshold on what their stomach can tolerate.
Right. I mean, that may not be a knockout punch, but it can certainly be a knockdown punch. And that's something that you don't really want to have to deal with. And that's another thing. I guess we're trying to cram a whole lot of things into one bag here at this time. But the reality is, what Ross Wealth Advisors does is, well, it's designed for a specific group of people. And those are the people that you like to call retirement-minded.
Yes.
Which are either people who are currently retired or within, you generally say, 5 years of retirement, somewhere in that ballpark?
Maybe even 10. And,
between 5 and 10.
Yeah. And I explain that. We do a lot of public educational events. And I describe to everybody there, retirement-minded is retired or within 5, maybe even 10 years of retiring. The goal is you want to make sure that you're in a good position for investments, for income, because, I always say when that paycheck stops, everything changes. You go from a paycheck to a playcheck, which is
it's a different world.
What you saved, you're depending to live on, even if you have a pension and Social Security, which many people here in Central Ohio do. So the concerns we want to address are you invested appropriately? Can you generate dependable income from your savings? And how do we lower your taxes? Okay. By the way, all those funds all of you have saved in, the 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, Ohio deferred comp, you've paid zero tax on. And we want to show you some strategic ways to take the money out to pay the least amount of tax.
Yeah, because it didn't hurt when you were putting it in and you weren't paying any taxes on it going in. The problem is when you go to take it out, Uncle Sam's going to be right there with his hand out, and there are ways to at least minimize how much ends up in his palm and not your pocket.
Yeah. And that's what we could do with that portfolio MRI, that if you call our office, 614-545-0277. Now, it's Sunday morning, so obviously we're not there to answer, but we have an answering service. So they'll take your information, and I want to provide you a portfolio MRI, which will completely analyze your portfolio for fees, volatility, which is, how much up and down are you suffering? Are you truly invested appropriately? And our clients and everybody we've done these for, it's really eye-opening. And, they're like, wait a minute, my broker who put me on all this never explained it to me. And I'm like, well, there you go. That's why you're talking with an independent advisor that's not being told what to do by their brokerage firm they work for, or the bank that they work for, or even the mutual fund or insurance company. That's the key for independence, and the portfolio MRI will really give you a great understanding of what is going on in your savings. And so, if you've saved at least $250,000, give us a call, 614-545-0277. Or you can also visit, what's our website there, Joe?
It is rosswealthadvisors.com. You can't forget it. And one other thing I would mention, obviously it's early in the morning on a Sunday, and people are not in the office to answer the telephone right now. But of course, anytime during the week,
got an answering service.
People
awesome.
are free to, and you can certainly call that 614-545-0277. But you can also email Don directly. That's one of the things
Absolutely.
that you may not have had to experience maybe with a broker in the past, or an advisor where you maybe could never get a hold of them, or they didn't answer you, or they seemingly didn't exist. They only existed maybe one time when it was to get you to sign some papers and collect fees from you. But Don, I can guarantee you can email Don. It's really simple. It's Don, D-O-N, at rosswealthadvisors.com.
Pretty original, huh? Pretty original, right?
Hey, it works. Keep it simple, stupid, and I'm stupid, and I like it simple. Don at rosswealthadvisors.com, and Don will answer you.
I do. Within 24 hours, I've had many people say, wow, I'm impressed how fast you reply. And
when I say he will answer you, he will answer you.
Yeah.
Don will actually send you an email. It doesn't go to a generic mailbox where there's an intern that sends back, well, here, you can send us this information and we'll contact you later. I mean, it's
immediate.
It'll be an immediate personal answer from Don. So that's another way to get in contact. And one of the things that you've always prided yourself on is preparation. I mean, and it's the 6 Ps, and I'm trying to remember how to say it without being
you might get in trouble with
on
that
the radio, but proper planning prevents poor performance, if I remember correcly.
Nice. And, where'd you pull that one? That's good, Joe. I like that.
It's all up in here, up in the little noggin. But you actually have gone to a little more than just preparing. You actually have prepared and put in writing a very helpful guide, if you will. It's and you call it the Survival Handbook. It's the Retirees Financial Survival Handbook. Second edition is in print now. We have a couple of copies sitting here on the desk. And the interesting thing about the book, that when I read it the first time, which has been quite some time ago, is that it has a lot of answers to questions in there that people might be a little hesitant to ask, or that they maybe thought about, but they weren't really sure they wanted to vocalize it because it seems very simple and very obvious, but not necessarily to them. And the book, the Retirees Financial Survival Handbook, answers a lot of questions, and it also brings up a lot of questions that you may have been thinking about but didn't know where to go to get an answer.
Well, that's why I wrote it, and I even had many clients edit it before I went public with it. And it's 10 chapters of the most important topics. And by the way, it's large font as we look through it right here in the studio. It's large font.
I don't even have to get my cheaters out to read it. It's awesome.
I mean, I wrote it for the eyes that are reading it. And I've had great compliments saying, yeah, you're talking my language. Now, if you read it, and I want to talk to you about how to get a copy of this, if you read it and it doesn't make sense to you, or you think maybe we're too conservative, then that tells you right away we're not a good fit. We're not for everybody, nor do we want everybody.
That's another thing I was going to bring up, and it's kind of I always feel kind of awkward when we get to this discussion, or this point in the discussion, where Ross Wealth Advisors is not for every investor or every potential retiree that's out there.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or me.
No.
It's just that not everybody necessarily meshes. It doesn't work. What your services and Ross Wealth Advisors areas of expertise don't necessarily apply to somebody who's 27 years old and just got their first really real job,
right.
and they're in the early part of their saving. That's not That's not what you're here to do. You're here to help people who can see the light at the end of the tunnel and want to make sure they get to it.
Yeah, and we're highly specialized. So I would say 50% of the people we bring on every year, and we bring on maybe 24 to 30 families a year. So you're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of clients. I'm about service. I just asked a client the other day that onboarded about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, pretty substantial account, and the sizes are irrelevant, but I said, hey, did you ever hear from your broker? She said, never even heard. Never heard a word, like, what are you doing? And she goes,
and this was after she had chosen to become your client and no longer be a client of the previous broker.
And she goes, and that's very telling. So that's 50% of the time, but I'm not in the business of disrupting relationships. What I do is when we build a plan and I educate you on it, and you've read my book, you now see, wow, this is a better fit than where I was, because we're about protecting, preserving what you build, not necessarily the accumulation track. And so we're going to head to a break here in a second. But, I talked about the MRI, but, Joe brought up my book, The Retirement Survival Guide. And if you'd like a copy of it, you can also call the office 614-545-0277. It's 30 years of experience chalked up with practical solutions, actual stories of people just like you that are looking for someone to guide them to and through retirement. So we'll hit a break, and then we'll be back, and we'll see you on the other side.
We'll talk more about getting you to your abundant retirement, because this is the Abundant Retirement Show. Joe Bradley here with Don Ross, the retirement boss of Ross Wealth Advisors, and we're discussing retirement planning versus retirement income planning. It's just a one word, but big difference, right, Don?
Absolutely. Significant difference, Joe. Retirement planning is about growing your assets, like in your 401ks, your IRAs, deferred comp. So when you retire, you have that money to enjoy that abundant retirement. Retirement income planning is different in our area of expertise. Remember, when that paycheck stops, everything changes. Are your assets positioned and invested properly to generate reliable income, regardless of what happens on Wall Street or Main Street, and more importantly, how long you live?
So Ross Wealth Advisors is really about specializing in this, right?
Absolutely. Any mistakes during this phase of your life could be catastrophic.
Whether you're retired or within 5 years of retiring, or just have concerns about whether you're going to have enough money, call Don's office and schedule a complimentary visit. The number is 614-545-0277, or you can simply visit rosswealthadvisors.com. Welcome back to the Abundant Retirement Show here on Rewind with Don Ross, the retirement boss from Ross Wealth Advisors. I'm Joe Bradley. We're having a beautiful Sunday morning, and appreciate you joining us. Before the break, we had mentioned Don's book, the second edition of the U.S. Retiree Financial Survival Handbook, and want to remind you again, a very simple way to get that, and that is to call Don's office at Ross Wealth Advisors, 614-545-0277.
That's correct.
Lots of good information in that book, and it will certainly answer some questions for you, but it'll probably also bring up some other questions.
Yes,
and
it does.
And that's your opportunity to contact Don at the office and figure out how you can get the answers to those questions. And I can tell you very simply, it's to meet with Don and ask him those questions, and he will get you the answers. Now, one of the things that we have done in the past, and I'm sure that we're going to do in the future because we're getting ready to do it right now, is to talk about some real people. It's easy, I think, for a lot of people in the retirement planning business to talk about generic information. Well, you need to have this, or you need to do this. But Don has a different approach to that, and it's always been talking about real people. I mean, they're your neighbors. They're people that live around you.
Everybody out there listening right now. Yep.
You may work with them. And we don't get into specifics about people's money and their incomes and that sort of thing. But these are real life stories. These are real people that live in our community that have come to Don and said, Don, I want my abundant retirement. what do I do? Here's what we have. Here's where we are.
Yeah. And
Talk about some people that have done that with you here recently, Don.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the beauty of it is it's so unique. And, being independent, I don't have to answer to any bank or brokerage firm. We can custom design a plan. So most recently, Bill and Carol came in. I'm not sure if they were referred or they came to one of our other events, but they came in and they're just like you. They a few years out from retiring. They've saved well, and they have numerous accounts. They had 3 or 4 old 401ks. They had some mutual funds they saved and some old life insurance policies, and they'll get Social Security and a small pension.
So they had a whole lot of things, a whole lot of different buckets with various amounts of things in them.
We called, they had the financial junk drawer.
Sure.
And
and I'm sure that the other thing is, in addition to all those buckets, they had to have concerns, I'm sure.
Yeah, they didn't know what they were paying in fees. They just didn't know. They saved for the last 30 years and just said, all right, what do we do next? They were concerned their advisor was not able to help them when they asked certain questions. So the short of the long is they came in. We decided a second visit would make sense. They left with my book, read it, came back saying, wow, you're talking our language or speaking our language. We need to go to the next step. We built a customized plan. We looked at their portfolio. And again, their concerns were, how do we maintain the lifestyle we've become used to with dependable income? How do we lower our taxes? And how do we make sure we're paying the least amount of fees and risk in our portfolio? We developed a complete plan. We verified it. It's in a written format. They can take it, and we implemented it, and they are extremely happy. And like I said, it was time for them to graduate to a new type of advisor. And of the 30 people or families we bring on a year, half of them are leaving an advisor relationship, and it's okay because they see the clear difference. The clear difference is proper planning based on this stage of your life, not 10, 20, 30 years ago.
And one of the things that you mentioned before the break, and you'll hear this from time to time, this will get mentioned quite often when Don and I are talking, or if you call Don's office, and that is the financial MRI.
Yep,
We're all familiar with, the MRI. If you have to go to the doctor and they say, oh, well, I'm going to schedule you for an MRI, so they can check out your body. This is a financial MRI that Ross Wealth Advisors has basically perfected. And you take all of the elements. I mean, it's just as the medical procedure, only it's being done on your financial portfolio, or at least on your financials to help you develop a portfolio which is going to serve your abundant retirement.
Yes. And the key to that, and we won't get into today, but we talk about how we use academics and Nobel Prize winning information to build truly, truly diversified portfolios. And when we will do a financial MRI or conduct one on your portfolio, your savings, your investments, we'll have that conversation about what could be missing and why you should have some more diversification in your portfolio. And it's, I'm offering a complimentary and 614-545-0277. If you saved at least $250,000 for retirement, it'll really be appropriate to dig down and do this MRI. And it's really quite eye-opening, like a real MRI. I had one a couple of months ago on my foot, and they found some things in there that, damn, what did you do to your feet? Yeah. and the next question is, Doc, how do you fix it?
And you know what? And the reality is, for some people, not everyone, but for some people, when you get into their portfolio and you do your MRI on their financials, you find out that they're doing some things that aren't right and that are painful for them. And they don't even know it necessarily.
And they're glad to learn that, wow, it needs to be changed. And again, the reason why I wrote the book or we do the MRI is all about educating you, the consumer, first. Joe, I'm super big and believe that if the consumer is educated on any topic, especially their net worth, then I believe they come out ahead, whether we work together or not.
Absolutely.
There's people, hundreds and hundreds have read my book. I don't work with them because it wasn't a good fit. But the ones where we're a good fit, it's a really good fit. And we have many, many happy clients that love our assistance in watching over their shoulder to make sure they're making the right decisions with their retirement planning.
Well, and just like with your health, you can't just ignore it and expect it to go away, because that's not the way it works. With your financial health as well, you have to take a look at it. Yeah. And you may find out some things that aren't necessarily going to make you happy. But the good news is that once Don and Ross Wealth Advisors does do the MRI on your retirement situation, you know that if there are issues to take care of, you can take care of them. Because the absolute way to fail is to fail to plan. Because if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, apparently.
Who said that? Was
Somebody
that Eisenhower
said that,
or something like
someone
that?
much wiser than I just remember
or was that
hearing
Zuckerberg?
But I'll tell you what. I'll have to give Zuckerberg credit for the way he held up under pretty harsh scrutiny. I think there were 44 different politicians that wanted to try to
get the limelight there.
First of all, get the limelight, but then try to put some kind of nail into his coffin. And honestly, I thought he did well.
Facebook, love it or hate it. It'd be kind of fun sitting in a room saying, I'm the richest and the smartest guy within 5 square miles of here.
Right. So go ahead and beat me up for 3 hours. I really don't care. But I will give Mark Zuckerberg credit for one thing, and maybe some other things too. But the one thing that stood out in my mind was that he basically stood up and he took responsibility.
Absolutely.
He accepted blame where I'm not necessarily sure that there's so much to necessarily blame him for in reality, but he stood up and said, "Hey, it's my company. We did some wrong things. I let it get out of hand.
We'll fix it.
It was a mistake. We will fix it."
Well, we're in the infancies of the whole social media and all that, so
right. But you know what? That being said, you're using somebody else's product. It's Facebook. If you're sharing personal information on the internet, you can't really expect it to be kept quiet. You're putting it on the internet, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, well, we post occasionally on Facebook, but all right, we're about to wrap up here, Joe, and I want to make sure everybody knows if you're not sure you want to call right now, that's perfectly okay, but if you do and we come in and visit, there's no decisions. You don't become a client on the first visit. I want to get to know who you are and what's important to you. That's all that matters. And RossWealthAdvisors.com, poke around, learn a little bit, request my book, request the MRI. Those are the two things that every week I'm going to say, hey, get this information and start educating yourself.
Yeah, first thing to do is educate yourself about Ross Wealth Advisors. Go to RossWealthAdvisors.com. There's a lot of information that is on the website just to get you started. And a lot of people will do that first and then say, this guy seems to have his head screwed on straight, which is true.
He's not bad.
And then the next step would be to call the office and get a copy of the Financial Survival Handbook, second edition, I might add. That number at Ross Wealth Advisors, I can't say this too often because I forget phone numbers from time to time these days. 614-545-0277. The easy way to find it is also RossWealthAdvisors.com. That's the easy way these days to communicate. Just give them a website address.
And the reason why I wrote it as a survival guide is when I enlisted in the military in 1981, after I graduated high school here in good old U of A, I enlisted in the military, and the first thing you get in boot camp, for many of you veterans out there, is a survival handbook, how to put on a tourniquet, I don't remember what else, but so that's what I wrote this book is how to build and protect your retirement with strategies, concepts, and techniques to make sure we've got your six covered. That's really why I wrote it like a survival guide, and I was privileged to serve over 23 years as an Army pilot in the Ohio Army National Guard. So we're about done for this week. So, Joe, if you want to take us the rest of the way, appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is the Abundant Retirement Show. You'll be hearing us every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. here on Rewind. So we do invite you to join us every week because we're going to be talking about different things. A lot of it will be common ground that gets covered for new folks that are joining us each and every week. But we'll be getting into new topics, and whatever is current and topical we'll be discussing. And, of course, the important thing is we'll be talking about how you can fulfill your goal to an abundant retirement. It's Ross Wealth Advisors. Don at RossWealthAdvisors.com is the email address, and you can check out a lot more information on the web at RossWealthAdvisors.com.